is Mark Ronson. Well, I remember actually, as a kid going down, my parents were kind of like this young, happening couple in London, and they would be throwing a lot of late night parties, and it'd be like, wake up in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning, and there'd be like 70 people in the house. And I remember always being more attracted to the speakers. Like, it was almost like I would follow all this noise so I'd find the music, and I would just sit down in front of the stereo and just play air drums, like oblivious to like what was going on, and probably these people being like, oh, look at a cute kid, or not. And then that was it. And then I got a little pair of like kids drums when I was a kid. And just every major memory that's sort of impactful of my life from being a kid has something to do with music. Like, I don't remember the first time I kicked a ball or the first time I saw a cartoon, but I remember the first time that I went to the store to buy like a 45, because in London growing up you could buy 45s down at the local newsagent, and putting it on like a Fisher-Price record player and things like that. So, but I also remember when my mom got remarried to my stepdad, I was 7 years old, and they had this party in the garden, the house they lived in or they rented, but there was this double tape deck inside the house, and the cables ran outside, and I remember being like, oh my god, if I can like sit here, I control the music that they're all listening to out there, and thinking it was so cool. And also like trying to queue up the tapes really close so there was like as little space in between the songs as possible. And I guess it kind of, obviously that's quite a lot to do with what being a DJ is. So. Well, I played a lot of music like in bands in high school, and mainly kind of rock bands, but it was New York, kind of the late 90s, and there were these New York bands like Living Colour and all these bands that me and my friends loved. So we were like 5 city kids, 2 black kids, 3 white kids playing bad funk rock. And then I got really into hip-hop around that time, and there was great DJs all over New York radio at the time, from Funkmaster Flex to Stretch Armstrong, all these people. And so I started to get really into hip-hop, and that's when I started DJing. So I was DJing in clubs for about 6 or 7 years, because like I loved this music. I didn't know anything about producing. I knew I didn't want to be a rapper, so like DJing was the way for me to like live in this music. And then that sort of led to producing, I guess, you know. I think the reason I found producing it is because it was I was never an incredible guitar player. I was never a virtuosic piano player. But I loved all these things about music, and I was decent at a lot of things. That production just became like the thing that made sense, the kind of way of these like sort of talents like fit together a bit. So then I got into producing, and I mean I wasn't doing anything like big records or even important records. I would just like, if I met a rapper out in the club when I was DJing, I'd be like, do you want to come to my house? And maybe broke him by doing a few remix for De La Soul and 1 or 2 other things. And then my first album that I worked on was this artist named Nika Costa, who was on Virgin maybe 10, 11 years ago. And then kick-started a bit from there. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that drums were my first instrument. I was always drawn to like the groove and the sound of drums, like specifically like just the sound of like a different snare drum or whatever it is. And that, like, especially in funk, you think of like 60s, early 70s, like the sound of those break beats and drums, and which is also very much the sound of like, you know, 80s and 90s hip hop. Like that's the era they were sampling from. I think my dad loved that music, and so, you know, a lot of it, sometimes you get stuff from your parents, but it's just always been my favorite music. I don't know, like I remember going to Tower Records on 66th Street in Broadway when I was a kid and buying a tape by the Meters, a tape by the Average White Band, and something else, and just being like just having my mind blown, like loving the way that the guitar parts intertwine, like that James Brown thing of the 2 guitar parts playing off each other and the drums, and how you make the groove by where you don't play and all these things. I mean, there's no way any of us could have ever known that Uptown Funk was going to be, even if as hard as we worked on it and as how, you know, proud of it all we all were when it was finished, you still never know. Like, it's still so subjective. There's so many things that have to line up for your song, even to go to number one just for a week still would have been the greatest accomplishment sort of my career. And then to see where it went after that is it's ridiculous, you know. I don't I try not to think about it or reason it too much, because it's not something that you can really make sense of. It's just something incredible that happened. And you know, we did work super hard on it, and the fact that me, Bruno, and Jeff Basker all produced it, we're all pretty tough critics of ourselves. So like, you put like 3 producers in a room, even though there's a lot of stuff we all love in common and we love each other, like, you know, there's a lot of like egos, ideas back and forth. Like, you know, I like that version, well, I don't, and, you know, these things. And we wrote this song in had such a moment this first night. We were at Bruno's little studio that he used to have in Hollywood, and Bruno was on the drums, I was on the bass, Jeff was on synths, and Phil from the Smeezingtons was in the room. And to make a jam and have something be really exciting is an incredible feeling. But to actually then get it to the end of the line where you've recorded everything, you've done the horn arrangements, you've written every single line, especially, you know, Bruno, myself, Jeff, we're all like kind of perfectionists in our own way. And there were so many times that song nearly ended up in the trash, you know, and it would all be like, oh man, we just worked on it for 3 days. It's just some things, unfortunately, aren't supposed to happen. And then I'd wait till everybody's nerves cooled for like a couple of weeks and just kind of like got everyone kind of excited about it again. Because, you know, it's for my record. I had a little bit more maybe at stake. Bruno's had a bunch of number ones already. Yeah, and that was it. But I guess I really am proud of the record. I actually really like it. I mean, it's not like one of those things where you hear the bands talk about their biggest hit and be like, oh man, we hated that record. Like, I wish that song was never hit. It's like, I'm as proud of that song as anything I've ever worked on, you know. I think it's like any of the people that I've worked with, and I mean, those are obviously the most successful people I've worked with, Bruno and Amy, but yeah, they're both such incredibly different artists. But I guess the key to like a successful relationship like that is you both inspire each other. I guess there's holes that, I guess there's like in Amy's case, you know, she just had incredible songs and she just wanted to work on them with somebody that had the same sensibility as her and liked some of the same music. And obviously she turned me on to a lot of music I'd never heard, a lot of 60s girl group stuff, but we had a lot of shared stuff that we liked, like late 60s soul and Motown and Mos Def and hip hop and whatever else it was. So I guess that's why it worked. But you know, I'm also incredibly fortunate because those are 2 of the most talented singers, songwriter, performers of the past 30 years. So I mean, I'm really lucky that they kind of both also ended up at my doorstep at some point in time, you know. Amy and I had a lot of fun working on the record. I wish we'd worked on it longer because I'd have more memories. It was pretty quick. Like, you know, she came to New York in about 7-8 days. We demoed all those songs. She was just funny. We would just laugh. She had a really quick, like, razor sharp wit. I don't know. It was just a good time. It was funny. Like, I watched the documentary on her the other day, and I forgot that someone was filming. There's a scene in it where she's recording Back to Black, the vocal, and it was just such a normal day. Like, I remember right after she did that, she was like, "You want to go Starbucks?" Like, it was just like whatever. Like, I had no idea that I was working on something that was gonna mean so much to people, even if she was still here. So, yeah. I mean, I guess I wouldn't really want to change much of the path that I've gone on, so I don't know if I go back and tell the old me too much, because even the times when I saw these other more successful people kind of rocket past me and I was like, oh, I'm in the wrong profession, like this is, you know, watching So I knew people like Kanye and Danger Mouse and Chad and Pharrell and people quite early on, and I'd just be like, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, these guys are massive, and I've been doing it for 6-7 years. Like, I should just give it a rest. And even those times where you're full of self-doubt and all those things, like, you somehow get super inspired to, like, do something. So, I mean, if anything had changed or been different, I wouldn't have got to work with these people and meet Bruno or Amy and all these things. So, I wouldn't tell myself anything. Well, one of the first records that I had that really, I guess when I was 15, 16, I was 14, 15, I was listening to like Guns N' Roses and Led Zeppelin and Hendrix and what every, like, you know, teenage boy listens to. And I heard the Brand New Heavies, that were this English funk revival band, this soul band, and they were part of this movement that came out of London called this acid jazz records that, you know, later Jamiroquai came out of. And it was just amazing. It really just turned me around to the kind of music that I wanted to listen to and make. And obviously you go through phases. You don't suddenly just hear one thing and then only want to make that the rest of your life. But it really, like, it informed me, and it's sort of like the first time that I realized how much I loved, like, a beautiful R&B vocal over these beautiful sort of like jazz funk chords with these great musicians playing it. And it's actually what took me back to, like, discovering a lot of the really great jazz funk stuff of the original era, like things like Roy Ayers and Earth, Wind and Fire. And so that first Brand New Heavies record was really like a really, really massive deal for me. And it kind of like, it definitely changed the path that I was going down musically. Hey, this is Mark Ronson, and you're live with Grammy Pro.